From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Mr. Snowden is not a whistleblower. He is accused of leaking classified information and has been charged with 3 felony counts, and he should be returned to the United States as soon as possible, where he will be accorded full due process and protections.
As the White House condemns Russia for granting Edward Snowden temporary asylum, the NSA's surveillance programs coming under increasing criticism in Washington from an unlikely bipartisan coalition. We'll speak with Republican Congressmember Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Democratic Congressmember John Conyers of Michigan on their efforts to stop the NSA from tracking every phone call in the United States.
It's my fear that we are on the verge of becoming a surveillance state, collecting billions of electronic records on law-abiding Americans every single day.
Then a national strike for a living wage and the right to unionize in the fast food and retail sector spreads across 7 cities.
Trying to accomplish $15 an hour and the right to form a union without retaliation from our employees and respect on our jobs. We can't support our families on what we make, and we come together and try to form a union.
We'll speak with one worker who went on a strike. His father of 3. He works at both Burger King and Pizza Hut. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Obama administration's reconsidering plans for a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin next month after Russia granted a year of temporary asylum to National Security Agency whistleblower Edward Snowden. On Thursday, Snowden left the Moscow airport, where he'd been sheltering for more than a month while the United States sought his return to face espionage charges for revealing NSA spy programs. In a statement released by WikiLeaks, Edward Snowden said, quote, "Over the past 8 weeks, we've seen the Obama administration show no respect for international or domestic law. But in the end, the law is winning. I thank the Russian Federation for granting me asylum," he said. A Russian lawyer for Snowden said he's set to begin a new life in Russia. We'll have more on Snowden and the latest NSA leaks after headlines with 2 members of Congress who are trying to defund the NSA's bulk collection of phone and data records, Democrat John Conyers of Michigan and Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie. The United Nations says Iraq has closed out its deadliest month in more than 5 years following a wave of sectarian bombings and shootings. In total, the violence killed 1,057 Iraqis and injured more than 2,300 in July. Many of the attacks focused on Iraq's Shiite majority, which leads the government. In Egypt, supporters of former President Mohamed Morsi are launching new protests today to call for his return to power almost exactly a month after he was ousted by the military. Despite a pledge by the interim government to gradually clear out Morsi supporters who've been occupying squares in Cairo, protesters said Thursday they will remain in place.
We will not evacuate this square until Mohamed Morsi is returned to power and legitimacy and the parliament return. That's all. Even if they come with tanks, we will remain peaceful. Our peacefulness is more powerful than bullets. Our peacefulness is more powerful than bullets.
President Obama and Yemeni President Abdurabu Mansur Hadi met at the White House Thursday and pledged to work together to repatriate Yemeni prisoners held at Guantanamo. Human rights groups criticized Obama for failing to lay out concrete steps for the transfers. Of the 86 Guantanamo prisoners cleared for release or transfer, 56 are from Yemen. The meeting between Obama and President Hadi came just hours after a U.S. drone strike in Yemen killed 4 people. A Yemeni security official said the victims were al-Qaeda suspects. It was the 3rd U.S. strike in Yemen in 5 days. Secretary of State John Kerry told Pakistanis on Thursday he hopes the U.S. will stop carrying out drone strikes in their country, quote, very, very soon. Kerry made the remarks in a television interview following a meeting with Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He claimed President Obama has a very real timeline for ending the drone strikes. Meanwhile, an investigation by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism solidifies claims the CIA targeted rescuers at the scenes of earlier drone strikes in Pakistan. A report by a Pakistani journalist commissioned by the Bureau found 5 so-called double-tap strikes took place in mid-2012, one of which also struck a mosque. In total, the attacks killed 53 people and injured 57. A parallel investigation by the legal charity Reprieve found 8 civilians died in one double-tap strike in Pakistan last July. Afghan officials say a NATO helicopter that was called to assist Afghan police at a highway checkpoint opened fire and mistakenly killed 5 Afghan officers. A spokesperson for the governor in the eastern province of Nangarhar said the police officers had come under fire and called for air support from NATO. Spokespeople for the U.S.-led International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan provided a slightly different version of the incident to the Associated Press, saying the NATO helicopter killed 5 Afghan soldiers during an operation involving both international and Afghan troops. They said an investigation is underway. The news comes as the U.S. Army has launched a new investigation into allegations its special forces have abducted and killed Afghan civilians. Afghan President Hamid Karzai briefly ordered a ban on U.S. troops in the province of Wardak earlier this year over claims of the abuse and disappearance of 9 Afghan prisoners. The U.S. military has denied involvement in the abductions, but has withheld the findings of an earlier probe. An Afghan translator recently arrested for his alleged involvement has accused the U.S. forces he worked with of committing the abuses. The translator, Zakaria Kandahari, says he knows of 3 Afghan civilians who were handed over to U.S. forces alive, only to later turn up dead. The United States is closing a number of its diplomatic posts around the world Sunday, citing unspecified security concerns. Deputy State Department spokesperson Marie Harf did not elaborate on the nature of the threat against U.S. facilities, but said it's possible some may remain closed for more than a day.
The Department of State has instructed certain U.S. embassies and consulates to remain closed or to suspend operations on Sunday, August 4th. The department has been apprised of information that, out of an abundance of caution and care for our employees and others who may be visiting our installations, that indicates we should institute these precautionary steps.
The United Nations says chemical weapons inspectors are poised to enter Syria after Syrian President Bashar al-Assad agreed to allow them to gather first-hand evidence for the evidence of alleged chemical attacks. The inspectors will investigate 3 sites of alleged chemical use, including one outside Aleppo, where at least 30 people died in March. The Assad regime and anti-government rebels each blame each other for the attack. On Thursday, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a rocket attack by rebels on an arms dump killed at least 40 people in the central city of Homs. A prominent blogger has been arrested in Bahrain days after the ruling monarchy vowed to intensify a crackdown on anti-government protests. The blogger, Mohammed Hassan, has also worked as an assistant to foreign journalists visiting Bahrain. Earlier this week, the Bahraini regime backed a proposal to ban demonstrations in the capital Manama and impose penalties, including revoking citizenship on protesters convicted of violence. Uruguay is set to become the first country to fully legalize marijuana. The plan passed by Uruguay's lower house would create a state-controlled legal marijuana market where Uruguayans would be allowed to grow a limited amount of marijuana in their homes and purchase it from pharmacies after entering their names in a federal registry. The bill now goes to the Uruguayan Senate, where it's expected to pass. Uruguayan President José Mujica has touted the bill as a way to undermine the illegal drug trade, which he termed a monopoly of mafias. In Washington, D.C., dozens of immigrant leaders and allies were arrested Thursday after blocking a major intersection near the Capitol to call for the passage of comprehensive immigration reform as Congress prepares for summer recess. More than 40 people were detained, including some who are undocumented, as they protested Republican efforts to increase border security without providing a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants. Later in the day, more protesters were arrested for blocking the hallway outside alongside the office of Republican House Speaker John Boehner, who so far refused to take up a Senate bill that includes a path to citizenship. This week, Illinois Democratic Congressmember Luis Gutierrez noted 44,000 people will be deported before Congress reconvenes early next month. The Senate's confirmed Obama nominee Samantha Power as the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Power served as Obama's senior foreign policy advisor during his first run for the White House before being forced to resign for calling Hillary Clinton a monster. She won a Pulitzer Prize in 2003 for her book A Problem from Hell, America in the Age of Genocide. Progressives have accused Power of selectively ignoring U.S.-backed abuses while supporting humanitarian intervention abroad. President Obama has tapped a retired corporate restructuring expert to oversee the Internal Revenue Service. John Koskinen oversaw the overhaul of mortgage buyer Freddie Mac following its near crash during the financial crisis and served as deputy director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Clinton. In a statement, Obama called Koskinen, quote, an expert at turning around institutions in need of reform. The IRS has faced scandal over its scrutiny of certain political groups who applied for tax-exempt status. An Ohio man who held 3 women captive for a decade while repeatedly raping them has been officially sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ariel Castro pleaded guilty last week to hundreds of kidnapping and rape charges in the forced imprisonment of Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight, who all escaped in May. On Thursday, Castro delivered a rambling statement before his sentencing, apologizing to his victims, but also claiming they consented to sex with him. Survivor Michelle Knight confronted him in court.
Ariel Castro, I remember all the times that you came home talking about what everybody else did wrong and act like you wasn't doing the same thing. You said, at least I didn't kill you. You took 11 years of my life away, and I have got it back. I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all this that happened, but you will face hell for eternity.
A federal jury in New York has found a former Goldman Sachs vice president dubbed the Fabulous Fab liable for fraud in a civil case over a mortgage-backed securities deal that cost investors $1 billion. Jurors found Fabrice Tour intentionally misled investors in the lead-up to the financial crisis by secretly working with a hedge fund on an investment scheme destined for implosion. One of the more notorious pieces of evidence was an email Tour wrote to a girlfriend saying, quote, the whole building is about to collapse any time now. The only potential survivor, the Fabulous Fab. Tour could now face a fine or be banned from the industry. Florida's rejected calls for an independent probe of the FBI's fatal shooting of an unarmed Chechen man questioned for his ties to the Boston Marathon bombers in May. Agents were questioning Ibrahim Todashev at his Orlando apartment when he allegedly tried to attack them. After multiple anonymous claims that Todashev was armed, it emerged he had neither a knife nor a gun. In a statement, the American Civil Liberties Union, which had asked for the rejected probe, said, quote, secrecy fosters suspicion, and the people of Florida deserve better than to be left without an explanation from their government about what led to a person being shot to death. And a federal court is weighing a bid by jailed civil rights attorney Lynn Stewart to obtain compassionate release from prison. A 73-year-old grandmother, Stewart's fighting stage 4 cancer that's metastasized, spreading to her lymph nodes, shoulder, bones, and lungs. She's serving a 10-year sentence in federal prison after being found guilty of distributing press releases on behalf of her jailed client, Egyptian cleric Omar Abdurrahman, also known as the Blind Sheikh. The Federal Bureau of Prisons recently denied her transfer to a hospital, despite the recommendations of her prison warden. In a new court filing, Stewart's attorneys write, quote, she's dying and her ability to function is rapidly deteriorating every day. On Wednesday, supporters in New York rallied outside a federal courtroom where the arguments in the case were heard. Robert Boyle, an attorney with Lynn Stewart's defense team, said he expects a decision as early as next week.
Lynn Stewart, even from the time she was arrested, even the government has never said she was a threat to anyone's safety. And so what really basis can they have in her condition to keep her incarcerated. It's inhumane, it's cold, it's all of that. I could go on and on, but I think it's, I think that the judge today, in giving an expedited scheduling, is treating it seriously at a very minimum, and hopefully will do the right thing next week.
According to doctors, Lynn Stewart may have less than a year to live. You can go to our website at democracynow.org for our previous coverage of her case. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm